My name is Sue Jacobs, and I have a senior in high school. And I'm in the Edmonds School District. He's finishing up in the Edmonds School District. He started at Shorecrest High School, and we transferred him because of the fuzzy math. Couple things. One, I need to know where you haven't mentioned anything about the standards for high school. Where is it? I know it's kind of fuzzy still, I think, or have you settled on what the standards are? And why did you reinvent the standards? We have the Strategic Teaching Review said that they compared it to like 4 or 5 other states, California, Massachusetts, North Carolina. I'm sure those states, those aren't copyrighted. Why didn't you go and look at those and pluck them out? Especially California, who had just recently did those back in 2000, and they're excellent.
Okay. The short story, in the legislature, we had the language for just outright adoption of the California standards, Singapore standards. The challenge is there are a lot of people that don't want to do that. The second problem is the nature of the legislative process is about compromise. Well, we don't want them to go away with their feelings hurt, so they should get something. Now, you would think, well, if half the kids in the state of Washington are mathematically damaged, there would be less of that. That's not necessarily the way it works. What we were able to do was get those high-class standards included in the review process, and just by being there, it showed, as to what Bob said, we're not quite world class. We're a lot better than we used to be, but we did not make that hurdle. At least we know that now. So I wish I could say by fiat, you could just make it happen. With 147 different legislators, that's really tough.
Do you happen the high school standards haven't been adopted yet, have they?
Yes,
or that, was it official?
Yes.
Okay, because I missed one session in August, so I wasn't sure whether it actually.
The new high school standards are adopted.
Okay.
They're on the OSPI website.
Are they doing the curriculum review now?
They will in November.
Oh,
It starts, I think, November 9th.
One of the few parents, I think, that have reviewed my child's WASLs. And I found both test questionnaires on the WASL, and I found answer or scoring errors on the WASL. And I know OSPI has a procedure that theoretically I can't talk to OSPI directly, but my proctor should be able to carry my question to OSPI to find out why my daughters have been misscored. And my proctor is always turned into a worthless bump on a log and an inert, immobile, bureaucratic object.
So this question is clearly for Ross.
Task force. We have an endless list of task forces, and this one specifically is reviewing the WASL testing process and all the issues, yours among many, that have come up. We've been meeting for the last 6 months.
I'm not on.
And yeah, he's not on it. And our goal is to get as much third-party outside information about how other states are testing, how other people approach it, what is the criteria, the format of all the third-party tests, the nationally normed tests, because it's very clear that the uniqueness that we've created, one, is very expensive, two, it is problematic to the actual benefit it provides. So the question becomes, three, if we transition to something else, say ACT, or any other sort of national model, there's a cost to that, and how much time does it take? And we're trying to accumulate the body of knowledge so when somebody decides to make that decision, they're not just swimming around the swamp trying to pick something out that sounds good, but we have a well-developed body of knowledge that says, here's what the WASL does not do, here's what ACT does, here's what SAT does, here's what the American Diploma Project, etc. So the specific answer to your question, I would agree. When you send those WASL tests off to be scored, they are sent to a big room with a lot of people that you know very little, if anything, about, and your recourse for getting misscored things, very tough, very difficult.
So what do you do with the NCLB then? If you have an assessment test that's giving you false information and you're failing the NCLB, what's the use of giving that assessment test in the first place?
Agreed. There's no question. You're absolutely right. One of the challenges we've had is the No Child Left Behind Act has not been reauthorized. It will be modified and amended in the upcoming Congress, change of political parties, change of leadership, all those good issues. We don't, at the state level, we don't know exactly where that's going to go. What we do know is we can have, again, the background information we need. So when we see which way the federal government jumps, we will be prepared to do it. But I would agree with you that if, in fact, we can't tell what our test is actually provided for, it's sort of argumentative that you could sit there and say, oh, we're meeting No Child Left Behind, which in itself is going to change. So it's a very fluid environment and it's confusing.
I'm not paying $30 million.
No's
My name is Don Dernberger, and I've been coming to some of these meetings for a couple of years now. My question is, Representative Hunter talked about moving the authority from the superintendent to the state board, and with the existing situation, I'd be in favor of that. I'm thinking if Randy Dorn were elected to that, would we still want to do that?
We would take the vote on that. The answer is yes. The rationale that created OSPI as an independent constitutional position back in the teens, the founding state of the 20s and 30s, that was meant to be a very elevated grassroots activist and to bring that voice to the state, the power of the state. The way it has evolved now, the governor signs all the budgets. The only power that OSPI has is what the legislature gives it, and the power to make rules, which is always more expensive. So the argument that an appointed superintendent of instruction versus an elected one has some measure of difference in the true mechanics that we get things done with is really, there's not a good argument to have it as separate.